All right, so I got a couple presentations for y'all, and if you can, or if you want to, ask questions. But I'm first going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency mining, and then talk a little bit about ZenCash. So does all the sound good? Should I go ahead and get started?
Yep, go for it.
All right, great. So here's a picture of the larger cryptocurrency facility that I got. It's just a little north of Atlanta. I think I can picture where y'all are because I used to live in Castle Rock, Colorado, and I'd go down to Colorado Springs periodically. Gosh, that was probably about 20 years ago. But we got decent electric power, not super cheap, but the nice thing is about 10 minutes away from my house. So that's really helpful. And let's see if we can advance this. Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit, why do crypto mining? I've been doing this for about 2.5 years. There's people that have been doing it for a heck of a lot longer than me. But 2.5 years ago was a good time to get into it. Bitcoin was just coming out of a 2-year bear cycle, and it was actually possible to be somewhat profitable. And here's a picture of the facility that I leased. It's not ideal for what I wanted to do because I'm bringing air in on the same side that I'm sending it back out, but we're able to make do. And I'll talk a little bit about electricity and cooling and other things like that. I'm going to go through this a little quickly, but if y'all have any questions, please feel free to stop me. Yeah, it's mostly a harmless hobby. Okay, so here's a picture of the first miner that I used, which was an Antminer S7 from Bitmain, and I got a couple of surplus power supplies to hook into it, and I put it in my basement, and it was really noisy. But I got a couple more, and then I decided I needed to rent a really small office space. So I found a cheap little 1,500 square foot warehouse space with a roll-up door and put a few miners in it and had some electrical outlets put on the wall. These are 30 amp, 240 volts. And I quickly started heating things up, so I needed to buy a fan that I got from Granger in a vent, and I brought air in and sent air out. My recommendation is if you want to get into mining, the best way to learn about it is to just start. Buy some kind of miner on Amazon or eBay, or start mining with a computer that has a single graphics card or something like that. Because just in the process of mining with one miner, you'll learn a lot, and you'll be able to figure out if this is something that you want to do or not. It does have about 100% annual ROI, and I had a previous business that in the IT industry, and anybody that's a businessman knows, hey, triple-digit ROI, you should at least give it a try and see how things go. So here's a few more pictures as I built out my first little facility with some Home Depot shelves and some ugly wiring. And then I built my first GPU miner. It's there in the upper right corner. And it was the only design that I could find online at the time, and it wasn't very good. It crammed all the cards together, and it overheated them. I had to send them back for repair. But I learned a lot building that. And these days I build GPU miners that have 6 GPUs like in the bottom right-hand corner that are spaced out a little bit. I got a little bit of experience in some technical fields. My education was electrical engineering and then nuclear engineering. I ran nuclear power plants in the Navy for about 5 years, and got into business and when I was in Colorado, I worked for a semiconductor company and then for Cisco Systems. I called on customers all over Wyoming. And I was back in 2000 through 2002. And then I started an IT business down here in the South and sold it back in 2014. And so now I get to play around with computers and make magic internet money. And my son, who's 15, helps me out. All right, so let's talk about the basics of what you need. And my presentation is mostly geared towards folks that are doing a few miners and are looking to scale it up a little bit, maybe to 20 miners, or to what I consider a mid-sized miner where you can do it as your full-time job, spending 2-3 hours on it per day on average, or less if you're going to take vacation. Without having to really hire folks or take on investment. And some of the friends that I'm with really find that it works well to partner up, to have 2 or 3 people in a partnership that have different skill sets. So people that don't mind doing a lot of the lifting and moving and cleaning and learning about stuff, and having computer skills helps. And now that it's tax season, I really wish I was good at bookkeeping, because there's a lot of inventory and things like that, purchase orders and stuff like that to go through that I need to send to the accountants, and I have to do that myself. But there's you can start mining, and then you can make it a lot more complex, and get all the tax advantages from setting up as a business and having expenses and income, and then trying out different mining strategies as well. And there's and I started my website and video posts, and I like to do these presentations because if you see the news, all you see is these large industrial mining organizations, and it's easy for people to cover those and do articles with them because they're looking to sell investors, they're looking to sell customers and things like that. But that's not the only way to do mining. There's a lot of people, and I know because I reach them, they reach out to me on my website and other places that are doing 5, 10, 20, 50 miners all over the place, and it's a great side job. And having started a company and had people work for me, I think one of the best ways to start your own business is to start it as a side job while you're working for somebody else. So just a quick overview for those of y'all who might not be familiar with it, of common mining hardware. Here is a disassembled Antminer. It's probably an S7. This looks like a slightly older picture, but it's got 3 hash boards in it, and they are ASICs, so application-specific integrated circuit mining, and they run a lot of processes. They generate a lot of heat. This is about a 1,500 watt miner. So imagine taking a hair dryer, turning it on, laying it on the counter of your bathroom, closing the doors, and never turning it off. And then imagine doing 20 of those or a few hundred of those in a room, and it produces a lot of heat. There's my rule of thumb is miners usually use between 1,000 and 1,500 watts, no matter what kind they are. And space. So you definitely need a place to do this. And I'm all about keeping costs low. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency prices. I'm not sure what's going to happen to availability of equipment. There's not a lot I can do about electricity prices, but I can sure as heck keep my payroll costs low and not spend a lot of money on anything fancy. I rent the cheapest space that I can. Here I was fortunate to find a landlord that was willing to let me cut 4 holes in the back of the building and put loud fans in place. And I chose this particular location because if you look to the left of the picture, you can see there's a transformer, a green transformer right there. It's very close to electric power. In fact, the electric company dropped a transformer just for me, 500 kVAs, and then a couple weeks ago they upgraded it to 750 because I was using it at the limit, and I guess I didn't like that. There's a lot of notes that I have on the side of here for people that maybe are building larger facilities, and some of the lessons learned. I like to give all my miners specific numbers and then give them IP addresses that are very similar to those numbers, so that when I'm looking at a miner and I see that it has a problem, I can quickly access the control panel for it. And I use professionals to plan out the facility. For small places, maybe you can do things yourself, but for larger build outs, and we use, about 500 kilowatts. I used an architect. We got permits from the county. I used HVAC. I used a general contractor because I wanted to be fast and running, and used electricians and had everything built to code and specification. Got us up and running quickly. And in this picture, you'll see that I have a roll-up garage door here, and I have 4 intake fans. You can't see them here, but those are filtered intake fans. We got a lot of pollen in the spring here, and one of the things I learned at my little facility the first year was if you don't filter the intake air, all that pollen and dust and everything is going to come in and coat your miners, and then you got to disassemble your miners and clean them out, which is a lot of work. So we don't have to do that here at this bigger facility. So we bring air into the middle. It jams. Each of these fans is 20,000 cubic feet per minute, so it puts in about 80,000 cubic feet per minute of air. The miners take a suction on that positive pressure, and then they exhaust the heat into the outer space, which then gets sent out the back. Electricity. So there's a lot of electricity. You can see some electricians doing our first build out here. That's a 1200 amp, 3-phase, 208 volt panel on the left, and 3 400 amp panels on the right. And then we get 3-phase in, but we supply single phase electricity, 30 amps, 208 volts to each outlet. And then we plug large power strips, or PDUs, power distribution units, into that, and then plug the miners into that. And it doesn't require a lot of internet, but I have internet from 2 different providers and a firewall that does dual uplink, so it switches from one to the other if it goes down. And just some more pictures of the electricity. What I found in talking to the electricians about what I was doing is they really didn't think that I needed as much electricity as I actually needed. And even when I told them I was running a data center, for most data center build-outs, people are used to not using the full amount of electricity. So when I talk to folks, I don't say that I'm doing cryptocurrency mining, because that just throws an element of confusion into the discussion that we really don't need. I tell people that I'm building a private data center that is natural circulation cooled, and it's high density power and high usage. And one of the things that I didn't know, you think I'd know being an electrical engineer, is that whenever an electrician talks about amps or volts, they only mean actually 80% of that. So when I say, hey, I want a 30 amp circuit, they just assume that I know that circuits can't handle 30 amps. It can only handle 24 amps steady state, or else it wears out all the equipment. So anytime you're talking to an electrician, it's 80% of whatever they say. And oh yeah, picture down on the bottom right, we went and visited a local power station for hydropower. If you can find places where there's hydropower, that usually tends to be the most inexpensive electricity. Although, having driven through Wyoming and talked to folks there, I think they generate 4 times as much electricity as they need up there. So I think you got pretty cheap electricity up there too. And airflow, you just need a lot of airflow. Here's my son standing between the fans, the intake fans. Again, these are about 20,000 cubic feet per minute, and they're filtered with stainless steel mesh filter that we can take out and clean. And sometimes we clean them once a month, sometimes we clean them every few weeks. In fact, we have spare filters, so we can just swap the filters out and get things going. I like having multiple fans, even though multiple devices increases the possibility of failure. I like having multiple fans because in the winter, instead of having 4 intake and 4 exhaust fans, I can go to 3 and let some of the minor heat recirculate, and the air doesn't get too cold. And then if I take one down for maintenance, everything else can stay up and running even in the summer. And here's just a few more pictures. There's me on the outside there in the upper left. In the middle upper picture, you can see that there's filters on the intake fans. And then there's a picture of the inside of the box, a plenum or a box or whatever you want to call it. If I had my own building, I probably wouldn't bring the air in on the same side as I send it out. I'd probably bring it in on one side and send it out the other. That wasn't available in the leased space. I think most landlords, when they really understand what type of electrical changes and ventilation changes they don't want to lease you their space. That's what a lot of my friends found. So that's why I say it's better off to get your own space, or maybe you can sublease part of an industrial space. Or there's a lot of different situations, but there's a few changes that are going to have to be made. One of the things I learned, because I don't use backup power and I don't use uninterruptible power supplies, because those are just an extra expense. The upper right is the fan controllers that we used first. So I used variable frequency controllers for the intake fans. I thought I'd change those around, and then electronic fan controllers for the exhaust fans. What we learned after the first power outage and the power came back on is all the miners came back on and the intake fans came back on, but the exhaust fans did not come back on because the electronic fan controllers had opened their latches. So in the bottom right, we use mechanical fan controllers on the second build out. And the mechanical fan controllers keep the fans on even when building power goes off and then comes back on. All right, so there's a lot to talk about mining strategy. Big picture, I'm just going to say it's easy to go out and see what the different algorithms and coins pay right now at this instant. My recommendation is to look for projects that are going to have some longevity. Mine for those projects, so whether that's Bitcoin or Litecoin. I'm involved in ZenCash. I think that's a good one. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But coins that are going to have longevity, that have a good team, and as long as they're like in the top 5 or top 10 list on what to mine, just mine them for weeks at a time. And if you can, hold on to the alternative cryptocurrencies that you mine for at least 3 months before converting to Bitcoin. That way, there's always changes between what the prices are. So if you can go to a local, if you can wait until you can get a little bit more Bitcoin for your altcoin, then switch over to that. And then my recommendation is hold on to your Bitcoin or Ethereum for at least a year if you can. And that way, when you sell it, you have long-term capital gains for tax treatment instead of short-term. And then the longer you hold on to it, hopefully you can sell it at a high point. And ideally, you'd have about 6 months, or at least 3 to 6 months of dollars in the bank for your monthly expenses. And if you can get to that kind of staggered way of doing mining and converting to Bitcoin and selling into dollars, you might even be able to increase your profitability by 2 or 3 times over the course of the year by having that flexibility. Of course, once you convert it to Bitcoin, then you can trade for other cryptocurrencies that you might have done some research on and wanted to buy and hold. Again, if you, just like any startup investing, you look for a market they're going after. You look for a team that has a track record of success, and then you see how they execute, and maybe buy some of that. And as it goes up in value, as it hopefully does, you sell a little bit to get your money back, and then have a free ride. Technical analysis for stock chart helps as well. Trading is something I'm not very good at, but I can mine cryptocurrencies, and I get a little bit every day, and then I build up a bunch, and I look at the prices. I'm like, wow, that's a lot higher than it's been in a while. I think I'll sell a little bit. That's about the extent of my trading. However, what I'd recommend is to hold on as much as you can to as much cryptocurrency as you can. Because I think over time, or at least I hope over time and expect over time, that the treatment of cryptocurrency is going to get better. So like in Germany, already I think they just passed this last week, they said if you buy something using Bitcoin, you're not subject to capital gains taxes for the change in value between when you purchase it and when you used it to buy something. Maybe we'll get treatment like that here in the United States. And perhaps at some point you could trade with people or barter or buy things directly with cryptocurrency. Doesn't hurt to ask. At my local gym, I do CrossFit. I talked to them and said, hey, can we start paying you in Bitcoin? Because I'm at the point after 2.5 years of mining that I've got a lot of Bitcoin, and every time I convert it to dollars, it's a taxable event. So we're going to go on vacation here in July to a place where they accept cryptocurrency. So as you start to build up different cryptocurrencies, you can ask people if they accept them, and then the converting it to dollars is their problem, or maybe they'll just hold on to it and keep using it for buying and selling things. Okay, so more information. I know I went through this kind of quickly. Happy to answer questions, but I do have a website and a YouTube channel here on my. I don't do videos very often. I just kind of do this for fun and to let people know my perspective on how to do cryptocurrency. And but I do get some people watching my videos, and one of them is a tour of the place that I've got right now, and then I've got some strategies on how to build out and data networking and things like that. And then I've got a website where I write some blog posts. Like if you wanted to build a GPU miner, there's instructions to do that. It might be a little out of date. You might need to find different graphics cards, but other than that, it should be pretty good. So I'm not going to do a video tour of the Bitcoin mining facility. Wanted to give you all an opportunity to ask some questions, and then I can talk a little bit about ZenCash if you like.
Are you concerned about newer higher hash rate, Bitmain or whoever comes with them this year and raising?
So I'm having a little hard time hearing you, but I think what I'm hearing you say is, am I concerned about hash rates going up and more miners coming online and things like that?
Yeah, are you concerned about difficulty going up on Bitcoin as newer miners come out whenever they come out?
Yeah, so from the time I bought my first miner, I started trying to run numbers on profitability and things like that. And whenever I did the spreadsheets and ran the numbers, it looked like I wouldn't make any money. But then what I noticed was that when I ran the miner and had my electric costs, I always made money every month. So that then I bought more miners, and it just kept going up. So my ability to predict the intersection of the hash rate difficulty and the price and the amount of hash rate coming online is really poor. So instead of trying to predict what's going to be, I instead set up a more flexible arrangement to have some Bitcoin mining, some Litecoin mining, some Dash mining, some GPU mining. And if there is an upgrade, I think I have some follow-up information on here. The big thing is going to be based on semiconductor process technology changes. So there are certainly a lot more miners that are being sold and put in place there. But the big change is going to be when like Bitmain or somebody comes out with a miner based on 10 or 7 nanometer, because it'll be 2.5 or 4 times as efficient. And then people are going to buy those and start putting them in place. And any of those big mining facilities, I always see them talk about pretty much just mining Bitcoin. And so I'm wondering how much other cryptocurrencies they mine. But regardless, what I went through with the changeover from the Antminer S7 to the Antminer S9 is over about 6 months, I changed out all my miners. So part of the thing that you might want to plan for is holding enough cryptocurrency or dollars to be able to upgrade your miners when you need to. That's the other thing why I like only having about 20% of all my miners in any one algorithm, because I'm guessing that not all the miners for each algorithm will come out with a new version at the same time. So worst case, I only have to upgrade about 20% of my mining stuff at once.
Were you able to sell some of them on the secondary market?
Oh yeah, I was able to sell them for just about the same price I had paid for them a year earlier. And right now I'm selling some old 28 nanometer graphics cards that I've had for a year and a half and been mining those. I'm selling those on eBay for about the same price that I bought them for a year and a half ago. And people ask me, they're like, well, where do you get equipment from? Because GPUs have been really hard to get. And it goes up and down. Like when there's really almost no availability and prices are high, I don't buy anything, because I know if I wait a few months, prices will come back down and availability comes back up. Seen this, I mean, it's been this way in the PC industry, in the IT industry. It goes in cycles. And I see by the amount of people that come to my website, like when prices are really high, maybe 6,000 people a day come to my website, but when prices go down like now, it's down to 2,000 or 3,000. So there's less people interested in mining when the prices go down. So I think if Bitcoin price continues to go down, who knows, might go down to 6,000 or whatever, fewer and fewer people are going to be interested in mining. Some of these large, $100 million mining facility build-outs might not happen. The investors might pull out, and then there's going to be a lot of mining gear. Meanwhile, people that are in it for the long haul are going to be happy and say, hey, I can finally buy some mining gear at a decent price.
Anybody else?
I have 2 quick questions. And thanks for talking to us tonight.
Yeah.
Are you planning to expand, or are you going to kind of just stay the same size and upgrade your equipment on a rolling basis? And 2, have you ever looked to do both?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I had an IT company, and every time we made a good amount of money, we'd spend it all in expanding and hiring more people. And so we grew our company bigger and bigger, but we never really had much cash. And then the industry started changing a little bit. And fortunately, we were able to sell our business before the industry changed too much that we had to do what other people have done in the past, which is just lose money and then shut the business down. So I don't want to be in that position with mining, and the way the profitability is, I shouldn't have to get into that position. So instead of expanding rapidly, I'm expanding slowly and carefully. So we just got a new transformer, so we can add a few more miners. We got about 450 at our big facility now. We'll probably get up to, I don't know, maybe 550 or so. And meanwhile, I'm looking at buying a building with some partners, and here over the next year or two, expanding a little bit. I really don't want to get to the spot where I have to hire people to help me do this. I do have kids that can help me, and I like to set up a lot of automation. Once you get things going and you have a pretty good routine, and if you have a partner or two, so you can share the work, it turns out to be okay. So short answer is yes, I'm going to expand, but I'm not going to take all my profits and put that into expansion, because doing that puts your business at risk. You got to keep a reserve of crypto and dollars.
Yeah, he also asked about solar or wind power as a possibility.
Sure. I'll buy power from anybody who makes power any kind of ways. But if I wanted to operate my own solar power, we can run the numbers on that. So an Antminer uses about 1,500 watts. A solar power that's maybe a panel that's about this big can do 100 watts when the sun's shining. So I'd need 15 of those for one miner. But I'd probably need 3 times that and a deep battery storage system. So I'd probably need, well, I don't know, 45 solar panels and some deep cycle batteries for one miner. And if I wanted 100 miners, then I'd need about 1,500, 4,500 panels for 100 miners. I've got 450. So solar doesn't really work for me. But I'll buy power from people who set up a solar power facility or a wind facility or whatever the local people can get to me over the grid.
You said you have to be concerned about being too cold in the wintertime. What is too cold?
Yeah, so it got down to like 20 degrees here, and we had all the fans going, so everything was pretty cold. On the GPU miners, a couple of the motherboards failed. About half the SSDs failed and had to be rewritten. And then we started recirculating a little bit of the heat, and I measured the temperature and the humidity, and it dropped the humidity down to about 8%. Once you're below 10% on humidity, static electricity can become a problem. But fortunately, we weren't moving around much or doing anything, so we didn't have any static electricity issues. But I do talk to some folks that are in an even colder place. In addition to recirculating warm air, they'll also put humidifiers in the space to get the humidity up.
What is that sweet spot as far as temperature and humidity?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 40 degrees and 20% relative humidity would be perfect for mining.
At least the data closets at my work are 40% humidity is what they keep. What software do you use?
Yeah, so so the mining, let's see, am I doing a screen share still? I think I am. So let's see, mining software. For my GPU miners, I tried Windows, and then I tried a whole bunch of Linux builds that were headless custom Linux builds, and I wrote instructions for how to do that on my website. But I like using pre-built mining software for GPU miners. I use Ethos. There's a few other distributions as well, but that really makes it simple to manage a bunch of miners and upgrade things. The software for the ASIC miners comes with the miners. And then for monitoring and management, I used to write my own, but I buy Awesome Miner software. On average, the price is like $5 per miner, and then you own it. And I don't know if you can see on here, but it hooks into every miner. You can set pools remotely. You can do profit switching if you wanted to. You can set up monitoring rules. So I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with Antminers, but sometimes the hash boards lock up and have all X's. This can sense when that happens and then reboot the Antminer. And then it totals up. It goes out to exchanges and finds the price, and you tell it what coin you're mining. So it tells you, I don't know if you can see it on here, but when I took this picture, these were X11 miners, so Antminer D3s. And this was maybe a month or two ago, and they were earning me $9 per day of Mu, which is what I was mining then instead of Dash. So yeah, I really like, I don't mind buying software from people. It makes my life a lot easier.
Can you do remote restarts?
Can I remotely access it? Yeah. So for all the GPU miners, I can secure shell into them. I have a secure way to do command line secure shell to them. And then the firewall I use, it has a VPN. So I can do the VPN, the client access VPN to the firewall, and then I can access any of the miners, or I can remote desktop to the Awesome Miner computer. I have it running on a server there. So yeah, I mean, you got to set things up so that you have remote access, and I can have it notify me in all sorts of different ways. But what I learned is that unless the entire power goes down, I don't really want to be notified because I don't have time to drive over there and take care of things. So instead, what I do is I let things run, and when I have time to drive over there and take care of things, I do that, and I fix up as much stuff as I can before I have to leave.
What level of encryption do you use?
What level of encryption for VPN? I mean, I use encryption on everything. So I recommend mining to software wallets on your computer, and so I run Linux on my laptop, and I have encrypted hard drive. I back it up to a bunch of different places. All those backups are encrypted. I use a VPN whenever I operate my computer, just a general purpose VPN that encrypts all the traffic to and from wherever I'm at. And I use a remote access VPN. I don't really know what algorithm it uses. It's one of the newer ones, so I think it uses IPsec with SHA-256, I believe, but I'm not completely sure.
Any other questions? All right, I guess we can move on to the ZenCash.
Sure, great, let's do it. Let's see, am I sharing my whole screen? I think I am. So let me do a slideshow. Are you seeing a ZenCash presentation now?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. So ZenCash is a cryptocurrency that I helped co-found actually about last year this time. We launched in May, and it was done as a chain split, which was a little new back then, from Z Classic, which was a exact copy of Zcash. So Z Classic was going well, and I was mining that, but there was really no organization or funding to do things like to pay to get onto exchanges or hardware wallets or development or things like that. So we just did a version of Z Classic where we could have an organization and start funding things, kind of like Dash does. All right. So one of the things that we're looking ahead to is Bitcoin becoming very popular. It's a leader. It's being used in all sorts of things. They're already having to deal with scaling issues. So, there's all sorts of things that the Bitcoin developers are doing that, and it's open source, which is great because we're based upon Bitcoin, so we can take some of these upstream improvements and bring them into ZenCash, and we do that periodically. But one of the things that Bitcoin doesn't have at this point of time is the ability for people to keep their transactions private. And that's one of the things that look at and say, okay, well, if people start being made examples of because they are using Bitcoin and not reporting it to the authorities properly, then they might have some issues. And there might be other folks like banks that don't like that Bitcoin is operating and perhaps hire some hackers to attack Bitcoin nodes. I mean, I don't know what the potential form of an attack can come, but I think there will be as Bitcoin disrupts existing businesses. So when that happens, especially if there's a concern or issue about transactions being tracked on the blockchain, I think people are going to have some more interest in cryptocurrencies that have a privacy function. And that's one of the reasons that I like ZenCash. So ZenCash, it's designed for privacy. So what we've got in addition to Bitcoin is a big feature that we got from ZCash, developed by Zuko Wilcox, who actually I think lives up in Boulder. And one of the advisors on our project is Charles Hoskinson, who also lives up in Boulder. Anyway, it adds a zero-knowledge proof capability and the ability to do a whole other type of transaction onto the same blockchain. So in addition to regular Bitcoin type transactions, there's which we call transparent transactions, because you can see who sent the funds, or at least the address of it, who received it and when it happened and what the quantity was. When you do a shielded transaction to a shielded, it's done as a cryptographic note, and all it shows on the blockchain is that a transaction happened. The only people that can see who it was from, who it was to, are the sender and receiver. The receiver can't even see who it was from. So in addition to being private, which is only the people involved know about the transaction, it can also be anonymous. So it's a true private and anonymous transaction done on the blockchain. Now, the way that the zero-knowledge proofs, the ZK snarks, are written is that in addition to being fully private, it has a 512-character message field in there. And that's a feature of Zcash. That's also a feature of ZenCash. And so we use that in order to send messages and send links to external publications. So that's where we get that not only are we able to do public, private, and anonymous transactions, but also messaging and publishing. It's not fast messaging. It gets written into the blockchain, so sometimes it takes a few minutes for the message to go. But anyone, you could take and create a website, for example, and put a shielded ZenCash address there and tell people, hey, if you want to send me a completely anonymous message or an anonymous link to something or an anonymous donation, send it from a shielded ZenCash address to this shielded ZenCash address, and I'll get the message, but I won't have any idea who it's from. So we figured that, in America, you probably don't really need that, but there's some countries in the world where there's a lot of things that are outlawed, and we're looking to be a global cryptocurrency, and that's a big part of the focus as well. So one of the things that we incorporated into it, so Zcash for the first 4 years has 20% of the block reward redirected to the Zcash Foundation. It's to pay for the developers and investors. At ZenCash, we have 12% of the mining reward, or the block reward, redirected for use. 8.5% of that goes to a treasury. Right now, the treasury is spent, and we've recently hired an accountant so he can do a whole accounting of everything and make it public by different categories. But we spend that treasury to do development and marketing and partnerships and all sorts of other things to do the vision of what we wrote about in our white paper last year. And one of the things that we're working on development is to integrate a governance system into the blockchain. And one of the cool things that we're able to do is, since we have shielded transactions, the company that's doing the modeling and the designing of the governance system is IOHK, and so they're design it so that people can buy a voting ticket with ZenCash, and then they can vote on the different projects that are up for proposal. And because it's done with a shielded transaction, nobody knows what the vote count is until the voting is over. So it's a true secret ballot. So I think that this is going to be different from any of the other governance type systems that are out there currently, as far as I know. And then over time, as we get that treasury and governance system tuned up and working, we want to take all that 8.5% and get it so that it's allocated by the people that are participating in the governance system. And then 3.5% of that block reward, so 8.5 and 3.5, that adds up to 12%. That goes when we pay for node operators. So one of the ways that cryptocurrencies can be attacked is for the nodes that the wallets connect to not be up and running. So we want to make sure we have a lot of nodes that are up and running, and not only are they up and running, that they stay up and running, and that the communication to and from them is encrypted. So that's some of the things that we put in place. Encrypted communication, which Bitcoin doesn't even have yet, between the nodes and the wallets, and pay people to keep them up and running. And for the folks that we pay, and I think there's over 8,000 nodes that we pay to stay up and running. We call them secure nodes. They have to have a TLS certificate. They have to be able to do a challenge, which is to do a shielded transaction. And that creates a nice base layer of shielded transactions all over the world, so that if you and I were doing shielded transactions, we wouldn't pop up as the only people that are doing shielded transactions. So those are some of the things that help. Research and development. So we got a lot of different things going on. We've set this up to operate kind of like a small, rapidly growing business. So we have project management. We've got different teams. We have multiple parallel development teams. So like we have 3 or 4 different wallets that are being developed by different teams. We have one team in Los Angeles that does maintenance and updates to the main software. We contracting out 2 different research projects right now, and 4 different development projects. One of the development projects that we're contracting is getting onto the Trezor Model T. Another is integrating ZenCash into OpenBazaar. A third one, research and then development, is going to be for the treasury and governance system. And then a fourth one, which is a little bit longer term, is to look at saying, is there some type of new blockchain or other type of decentralized technology that we could use to put in place to get us much faster block times and better scalability than the Bitcoin model. So those are all things that we've got in progress, and it'll take place over the next 1 to 3 years. So far, I think we've got a pretty good model for how things are going. We have a fairly active community on a Discord with a few thousand people that are members. And we haven't even been in business for a year yet as a new cryptocurrency. We didn't do an initial coin offering. We didn't do a pre-mine. We're kind of bootstrapping it as we go. And so the price of the cryptocurrency, as it goes up, we have more funds for development and marketing and things like that. And as it goes down, which it has been doing recently, we still get funds in every day, but they're a little less. So we have to scale back the pace at which we do things. But we're not going to run out of money as far as I can tell, as long as people still accept getting paid in Zen. And these are some of our team members. In addition to developers and project managers, we have a bunch of ambassadors in different countries around the world that they go do meetup groups. In fact, I'm talking to our Latin American ambassador tomorrow. She's doing a meetup group in Guadalajara, Mexico. So I'm going to talk to him a little bit about mining. And really, we have a bunch of different shows that we get out to, because there's a lot of face-to-face discussion that we're able to do with people. And there's so many different cryptocurrency projects out there, it's sometimes hard to differentiate what it is that you're doing, and having those direct conversations with people and showing them that we've got real teams and real plans and we've made real progress, it can help quite a bit. So that's the big picture, quick overview of ZenCash. Happy to take questions on it. There is some ATM integration in progress. I don't remember. It's in Latin America. I think there's going to be about 20 to 30 ATMs that we're going to be on. I think it's in Colombia and maybe Brazil. I was hearing about that just last week. And I did talk with a guy in Texas who runs a pretty extensive ATM network. And one of the things about Bitcoin ATMs is that in some places where there's been a lot of Bitcoin ATMs, that functionality actually starts to get integrated into the third-party ATM. So if you look at the ATM industry, there's a bunch that are owned by banks, and then there's a bunch that are owned by third-party people. So you'll typically see ATMs like that in gas stations and other places that aren't banks. And those folks have a lot more flexibility for what they're able to do. So those were the people that would typically put out a Bitcoin ATM, because it's not putting the ATM in place is easy. Actually getting the cash and the Bitcoin is easy. Having a whole bunch of techs that go out and service it and refill or take the dollars out and keep the ATMs up and running is difficult. So that's where people that have established businesses running third-party ATM machines can really put in place Bitcoin machines. But instead of just buying separate Bitcoin machines, they'd probably be better off either upgrading their existing machines so they can do dollars and Bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies. And that's what you're seeing in some places. And that's what the guy in Texas was telling me was going to happen. So he's going to work with the whole organization of third-party ATM machines to do that. Sorry, long answer to that. But anyway. Say that again? Yeah, the mining algorithm's Equihash. I find the best cards for the Equihash algorithm are the AMD R9s, which are a little older, or NVIDIA's.
Do you see any big switch, like if Ethereum goes to proof of stake, when then all these GPU rigs are going to jump off of that and jump onto the alt market a bunch and start mining a bunch of altcoins, or do you think there'll be any noticeable shift in that when Ethereum changes over?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of people mining Ethereum, and there's definitely a lot of GPU mining things out there. There's also a lot of altcoins that can be mined. And one of the things that I'm not sure that the people who are putting in place these 10, 20, and $100 million Bitcoin mining facilities fully understand is that just because you have more hash power doesn't mean the price of the coin goes up to make that profitable. So in the situation that you're talking about, it's entirely possible that, yeah, if Ethereum went to proof of stake, I think Casper was the upgrade they're talking about for that, that people would move their GPUs over and add their hash to all the other cryptocurrencies, and it would be less profitable to mine them. So yeah, that's a possibility. Hopefully, as that happens, the prices go up so that there'll be at least parity. I figure if I can earn through mining on a monthly basis or daily or whatever twice as much as my electrical costs, then everything works out okay. So for example, each machine that I run costs me probably about $50 per month in electricity. If I can make at least $100 to $150 in cryptocurrency on that machine, everything's going to work out just fine.
Rolf, what's your thoughts on electronium and mobile mining?
I heard, what's my thoughts on mobile mining? What was the other thing?
Electronium and mobile mining.
I don't know much about electronium. I know that the Kryptonite protocol that Monero does has the ability to do mobile mining. And by mobile mining, you mean mining on your mobile phone. I've talked to some people that want to set up big mining setups in containers so that they can move those to wherever the electricity is the cheapest. But I wouldn't really consider that mobile mining. I think that would suck your phone battery down significantly. And so I don't know, maybe you have a bunch of old phones and you put them on the counter and plug them in, or maybe it does a little bit. I'm not sure that's going to be a big thing. I have no idea. It's something that I'm really not very knowledgeable about, and so that's one of those things I'm just going to sit back and watch and see what happens. What do you think is going to happen on it?
Well, it's just showed up on KuCoin and pretty hot right now on the internet.
Yeah, I know people have been mining electronium, I think on GPU miners for at least 6 months. I remember looking into it a while back, and things change so fast, but I couldn't quite figure it out. And then there's so many different cryptocurrencies to mine or invest your time and effort and money in that if you just, to me, if I don't understand something, I just kind of walk away from it. Like I never understood Monero. And 2 years ago, I could have been mining Monero, and it's gone up in value so much. I wish I had, but I never really understood it, so I missed that one. There's a lot of ones that I miss.
What's in the near future for secure nodes?
So good question. We have lots of different ideas. I think secure nodes, so a lot of people start them out with virtual renting a VPS, a virtual private server, and getting up and going on it. The idea behind secure nodes is that there's a certain bar that you have to have in your technical ability to be able to set one up and maintain one. And that's by design. Because when you have a cryptocurrency, you want to have as many different people from the community interested in your cryptocurrency as possible. And that's why I like proof of work, because first of all, you get a whole bunch of miners interested. And then like involving people from all sorts of different countries, because that expands your capability. And then if you make it so that the wallets are really slick and usable, then people can actually use it and put funds on their wallet. But one of the things I had noticed talking to some of the folks is that there's a lot of countries where they have IT people, they have high cost of electricity, and all the IT people are not able to participate very much because they don't have much money, they can't mine, and they're really on the outside looking in. So we designed secure nodes partially to allow those people to participate. So think of it, you're an IT guy, you're responsible for a whole bunch of servers, and maybe you got some old servers. Like I bought an old Dell server that has 24 cores on it, and I bought it for $300 on eBay, and I plugged it in, and then I got some static IP addresses that are costing me about $20 a month. I think I got 13 static IP addresses. So for a really low cost, I can run 24 secure nodes on hardware. So I think the people that are running them on virtual private servers are going to get priced out, because I think there's going to be enough added that it may not be profitable to operate those. And there's always that type of thing, whether it's in mining or secure nodes or master nodes. There's always a balance of people saying, well, I've got 42 Zen invested in this secure node. It's costing me this much and it's earning me this much. Can I do something better? So I think over time, there's going to be a shift towards people that are running them in a distributed fashion on their own servers, or really sharp IT guys that are running a bunch of them on a single server. And if you want a node of network, or a network of nodes up and running, the guys that you want on your side are the IT guys that understand networking and security and servers and are sysadmins. And then if you want people that are your promoters that show folks how to use wallets and help troubleshoot and get them working on their computers, again, it's the IT guys that you want. So it was kind of by design, but it also is important because there's some functionality. Each secure node has to have a TLS certificate. And one of the things that we're working on for development right now, and active development, is domain fronting. And domain fronting is censorship evasion. So imagine that you're in a country that has a country level firewall, and you can't use Bitcoin because all the Bitcoin protocol is basically blocked at the country level firewall. Well, what domain fronting lets you do is, if you're trying to access a node that's running an additional application on there that encapsulates HTTPS and is hooked up by a a caching service like Cloudflare or Google Caching or Amazon Web Services, you can actually access the node, and inside the country, it looks like you're just going to Google or Amazon, but your wallet's connecting to a secure node outside of it. So secure nodes, by having that certificate, enable domain fronting, which should allow wallets for ZenCash to be used everywhere in the world, even inside buildings which have pretty aggressive firewalls or other things like that. So secure nodes are really important. There's the possibility, now that we have a large distributed set of nodes out there, that we may add the option for people to do additional things on their nodes. That's just one of the things we're talking about, whether it's storing things or doing the domain fronting or stuff like that. But that's still in the exploratory stages.
And I've heard Rob Versluis say that you guys wanted to keep the cost barrier to entry low on secure nodes. Is that true?
Yeah, and I don't. Secure nodes are set up as service nodes. They're not designed as an investment vehicle. They're not designed as a way to get a bunch of ZenCash off the market. Some of the master nodes, I think, are designed a little bit more as investment against vehicles. And I think even with Dash, I think they have maybe 4,000 master nodes, which takes 4 million Dash off the market. And I think they have about 8 or 9 million overall, if I'm right. It's been a while since I had a Dash master node. So anyway, yeah, keeping the barrier to entry low is important. And now with Zen, less than $20, you could set yourself up and have the 42 Zen for maybe about $800 to set up on a secure node. Not exactly cheap, but it's within reach. And when we first started this, Zen got down to a price of $3. So for less than $200, you could have the Zen requirement to start your own secure node. So there's really no reason to change that.
What do you think is going to drive crypto adoption?
Yeah, there's a lot of really smart people that talk about what cryptocurrency is and what current stage it's in, whether it's an asset that people want to accumulate. And it's already in that stage of adoption where it's something that people realize it's going to be around for a while, and it's an alternative asset class that people put in place. But I think what most people want to see is that it's used as a primary currency for day-to-day transactions. And there's a few different things that have to happen for that. On a local level, what we're working to do is set up small cryptocurrency ecosystems. So you can go to a store owner or an online vendor and say, hey, we want you to accept ZenCash. Great. They might even do it. But if they don't have any customers that spend ZenCash, it doesn't really make a difference. So that's why if you're part of a meetup group, or if you're doing a meetup group, you can actually be one of the organizations that makes the biggest difference around. Because you could, in your meetup group, say, every month, we're going to go to a different local vendor, and we're going to help them accept cryptocurrency, and then we're going to commit to go buy from that store in cryptocurrency. And that way you set up an ecosystem of stores over time that accept cryptocurrency with a community of people that spend cryptocurrency. I'm trying to do that locally with our CrossFit gym. And they said, okay, yeah, we're going to take Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then I've got a group of friends that are there, and they're going to pay them in Bitcoin and Ethereum. So we're setting up a little small ecosystem. So it's going to be, one small success story at a time. And as more people get cryptocurrencies and realize the tax implications of selling them, where they have to claim capital gains and other things like that, I think you might see it on things like Craigslist. I mean, like Craigslist, if you're buying or selling something, that's usually a cash transaction, because Venmo and credit cards and other things like that, those can be reversed. And that has an unhappy result. But once a cryptocurrency or a cash is spent, it's in the other person's hands. So I think you're going to start seeing small ecosystems develop, and over time, probably pretty quick, you're going to see that snowball.
Any other questions?
Yeah, my pleasure. Really, thanks for inviting me, and great questions. And man, y'all live in a beautiful place. I love when I was out there seeing Pikes Peak, and it's a great time of year. All righty. Well, I'm going to log off then. Y'all have a good night. Okay. Bye bye.